My name is Taylor Harvey. I'm the current chair of the ASUC Housing Commission and a co-founder of the Homeless Student Union on campus, as well as Formerly Homeless. Student homelessness looks really different than traditional homelessness. Students will sleep on couches of their friends, in cars, in libraries. I've heard of students sleeping in RSF, in locker rooms overnight, and they don't even recognize themselves as homeless. So in acquiring statistics, it's quite difficult to get accurate statistics, and often there will have to be a lot of negotiation between the statisticians and the actual information that they're receiving, because they'll have to say, well, the student reported themselves as not homeless, but when asked about their experience, they reported something that looks like homelessness. So they'll say, oh no, I wasn't homeless, but I was couch surfing. And so there's also this internalized stigma against homelessness that causes students not to identify as homeless and not to recognize their own reality. Housing is one of those things that is really difficult to get to people because there's so much that goes into getting adequate shelter. So I've had people approach me asking, does it need to have a window? Do the rooms need to have like a bathroom and a kitchen? Can it just be a bed and a door, or things like that? So student homelessness is a lot more common than you'd think. Around 11% of students will have experienced, or are currently homeless. So that's about 3,000 students. And that seems like a lot more than you would imagine. And this is something that's shocking to the university faculty, admin, staff. This is something that's shocking to other students that are far from this experience. This is something that's shocking to the community at large. And so Homeless Student Union provides a non-institutional resource for homeless students and emergency housing. The organization really targets homeless students in the most dire need and housing insecure students in the most dire need, and helps them with an emergency resource, because the university has no emergency resources for homelessness or housing insecurity. The closest that you can get is going to UC Berkeley financial aid, waiting in the ridiculously long wait list, and eventually see someone who doesn't know much about homelessness and doesn't know much about what they can do for you, but will eventually refer you to someone higher up that might be able to expand scholarships that you have, or grants that you receive, or provide you an emergency loan. Other resources are really targeted towards consequences or side effects of being homeless, such as the food pantry. So if you're homeless, you're likely food insecure, and so providing direct in-kind aid is a commonality in the U.S. social welfare state, and we're seeing that here at UC Berkeley. So instead of providing cash assistance or direct assistance to students, because generally people aren't trusted with institutional funds, they're given in-kind assistance. So the food pantry provides food, for example, and there are clinics that provide services, things like that, but often it's really difficult to get students money directly, or housing. Housing is a larger issue that affects all students, but homelessness, I think, is a concentrated issue that affects certain students more. And of course, I'd say that the housing crisis disproportionately affects students of color, low-income students, first-generation students, queer students. But I'd also say that homelessness even more disproportionately affects them. So for a long time, basically until our current chancellor, homeless students were largely unrecognized, overlooked, and declared as a non-existent population. And because of that invisibility, there has been no formal infrastructure. I would say the university hasn't only failed homeless students, but has failed all of its students that are looking for housing. The lack of both short-term and long-term planning at the university level has resulted in stagnation. I mean, the last housing site we built on was Martinez Commons, and that's the most recent development. And of course we have the new sites that are going to be opening next year, but who is this helping, and who are we targeting, and what students are we looking to house? When students are walking about the world and joking about the housing crisis being so bad that they'll sleep in the library, and memes are being made about the cost of housing in Berkeley, it becomes so normalized in everyday conversation that housing is so bad here in Berkeley that continues to ensure that real conversation and concrete conversation is not being held, and no solutions are being posed because we think that it's just an accepted reality. And I think that readdressing that and renegotiating the way that we talk about the housing crisis as well as homelessness at UC Berkeley is going to be key in making real and concrete efforts in the future.